I'm Anders E.T. Hersberg, and this is the Cap Ball Saloon, a podcast dedicated to the Second Amendment in the digital age. On today's episode, we'll be going over the recent developments at TRex Arms. We'll be talking about rare breed triggers and their recent interview with James Reeves. Also, we'll be discussing AI and how it's affecting the firearms industry and much more. So, stay tuned. But first, a quick word about Cap Ball Digital Strategies. Cap Ball Digital Strategies is a two-way focused digital marketing agency. We serve FFLs and others in the Second Amendment community. So if you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your bottom line and reach more customers, visit us at capandballseo.com to contact us and learn more. Now, back to the show. So for our first topic today, we'll be talking about the rare breed trigger interview with James Reeves. So, Rare Breed President Lawrence DeMonico and attorney Josiah Conterno sat down with James Reeves to discuss the recent Rare Breed trigger settlement, and I kind of wanted to discuss this a little bit and talk about how it came off, at least to me personally, and a little bit of the sentiment that's been showing up in the comment section. Now, it seems like this might be a little bit of a PR push for rare breed triggers now that they're finally free and clear to actually begin selling their forced reset triggers again. But the interview is interesting. First and foremost, I really should say that I do have to give rare breed triggers and the guys over there a lot of credit for fighting this particular legal battle. I can't imagine it was easy. It definitely was not inexpensive, nor was it something that was straightforward. There were multiple moving parts, and honestly, parts that I personally am not completely aware of or can keep track of entirely. But I do want to say that dealing with the government's dirty tricks is something that I would not wish on rare breed triggers, no matter what you think of them at the end of the day. Honestly, my main problem with the settlement is the number of questions and things that it leaves up in the air. Honestly, they could have pushed this forward further and gotten more binding precedent. I've previously discussed Matt's video on the Fudbusters channel that has much more depth and detail in terms of the actual elements and portions of it, so I would recommend that you check out that particular video if you are interested. But one of the main things that I'm personally interested in is the very real possibility that prior art could invalidate rare breed triggers patent. And every single action that they take, which is to defend their patent, which is something that they're pretty much having to do as part of this settlement agreement, exposes that patent to potentially being invalidated. And I would very much like to hear from people what happens to this settlement if one of its main pillars is nullified. I mean, is this something that the settlement still stands? Does it invalidate the entire settlement? Does this give the government potential future administrations wiggle room to get out of this particular settlement with rare breed triggers and pull a Darth Vader saying, I am changing the terms of the deal. Pray I do not change it further. There are just a lot of unanswered questions here, and I really do feel like this particular case stopped short of reachable goalposts. Now, don't get me wrong. I will take wins where I can get them. And this is probably a good thing for the vast majority of states in terms of how this is going to affect the treatment of forced reset triggers in the future. But as far as I am aware, this stops at the district court level. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not binding precedent across all of the districts. So it feels like, yes, we got a win here as a collective firearms community, but not the win we might have been able to get. Another thing that I found interesting in the discussion here was the definition between handguns versus pistols and forced reset triggers. This bit where they're saying that there should be no manufacture of FRTs for pistols, specifically defining them as, or excuse me, handguns, not pistols, but handguns, and specifically defining handguns as firearms where the magazine is inserted into the grip, feels like wordplay. It feels like they're trying to do some backdoor control where they might get a lot of pushback if they did it through the normal routes, such as ATF definitions. And throwing it here into this settlement feels like kind of an underhanded way to get additional control past us in what looks like a win. Correct me if I'm wrong. Other minds are more than welcome to differ with me on this, but that is something that I'm seeing, and I am wondering, why is that language in there and part of this settlement? Furthermore, on the issue of handguns and forced reset triggers, Lawrence DeMonico, I believe it was in the video, specifically said that they were unsafe. He does realize that machine pistols have been around for quite a while. Now, granted, those would be inherently NFA items for a lot of them because of the forward grip that they normally come with to make them more controllable, but machine pistols have been around for quite a while, and I find it kind of weird that he's making this argument that, oh, they're more dangerous than other firearms. Firearms are inherently dangerous. It's just stuck out to me as kind of a weird argument to make in this particular video. But hey, again, I'm mixed. On the one hand, rare breed triggers did definitely fight the good fight in court for a very long time, but on the other hand, it feels like they were 1 yard to making a touchdown and decided to just stop. So, I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on the rare breed trigger situation? I know rare breed has garnered a lot of blowback and negative PR from their patent lawsuits and other moves that they've taken to defend their patent rights. So I'm curious to see what you guys think of this particular interview in general. Me, I'm mixed. Again, I'm more than happy to have sympathy for the difficulty and the fight that they went through, but again, on the other hand, it feels like they gave up just before reaching that touchdown. But that wraps up this particular section. Let's move on to our next topic. Continuing on and to our next topic and touching on SIG, again, unfortunately, LFD Research has continued their work and it has more P320s on hand to do research on. So we'll be expecting a video from them in relatively short order discussing some of the new findings that they have. In the video that they recently released, they do suggest that there might be changes on some of the newer model pistols that address the unintended discharge issue or make it much more, if not impossible, to do. Did SIG actually manage to fix this issue but not tell anyone? It wouldn't surprise me, to be honest. And for our second bit of news on SIG, we also have a statement from the SIG Armorer. Now, previously, the SIG Armorer was supposed to be releasing a device or a drop-in replacement to attempt to address the uncommanded discharge issue. Then he released a short video on Instagram saying he had new data come in, and it looks like that new data might have been SIG themselves. What's strange here is in this video, he does make a lot of the same kind of talking points that we saw previously from SIG in their previous defense, talking about light-bearing holsters and things like that, but also the debris and things like that getting into the holster, which is incredibly weird, along with the drop safe issue, which was talked about with SIG and Mac on that video. The concern isn't over the drop safe issue right now. That's kind of doing some hand-wavy things, trying to make it about one thing that's already been solved when the concerns are about a separate issue. Look, I do want to be fair to the SIG Armorer, and maybe I'll take some heat for this, but at the end of the day, you do have to realize the SIG Armorer's business is dependent on SIG. And I do understand him in some ways wanting to go to bat for them. And in the testing that he talks about, I can definitely believe that he wasn't able to reproduce this issue, probably because he had a firearm with the proper parts configuration and doesn't have this inherent problem. Granted, in the whole grand scheme of things, with the sheer number of pistols that are out there, this is a relatively rare issue, but it's still a large enough issue that people have questions about this. And deflecting to things like the drop safe issue or talking about holsters is kind of weird. I don't want to overly heap scorn on someone whose business is dependent specifically on one particular manufacturer and call them out for trying to defend their relatively small business. And I'm just disappointed that the SIG Armorer seems to have changed his tune from, hey, I'm going to try and release something to fix this problem, to now kind of sort of saying he doesn't think it's a thing. I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to be unfair to him, but this does look like that, at least externally, that SIG put pressure on him of some kind. And if that really is the case, I really don't blame him. I blame SIG for their actions. And, well, it would be reasonable to blame the SIG Armorer a little bit for the statement that he released. I'm far, far, far more upset at SIG's actions for their "it ends today" statement, how they handled that, and now how they are going to the New Hampshire state government and trying to get, and have gotten, immunity from suit in that state. Honestly, the smaller companies that are dependent on SIG and just trying to keep themselves afloat, I think it's much more on SIG's fault if those small companies are trying to come out and say, hey, SIGs are fine. Sure, in general, SIGs are fine. It seems to be their more recent pistols, like the P320, that have the issues. Their older firearms are just fine. And again, for the record, I will say, I don't want to see SIG crash and burn. I don't want to see them turn into a hollow company that just gets sold off to the lowest bidder or go bankrupt and out of business. I want to see SIG come back from this. But that means they need to get rid of a lot of the upper level leadership and publicly acknowledge these issues. Or even just reverse course on things. Have a different tact with people. And I think maybe they can eventually recover. But the longer they stay on this path, the more damage they're ultimately going to do to their brand reputation. And the lost sales would be incredibly difficult to calculate in terms of how much revenue that they are potentially losing because people are losing trust in their brand especially in a market like the firearms industry, where trust is such a valuable commodity. But I don't want to continue belaboring the point about SIG P320s and their particular issues and all of that drama. Let's move on to some other topics. So, in a little bit of industry news, I do have a rather interesting feature article from the Dealer Wire. Will artificial intelligence lead to more in-person sales? So, editor's note, this comes from Keon Gleason, president of the National Association of Sporting Goods Wholesalers. It is his belief as a business and software leader that because every email, video, and photo have the potential of being generated by AI, and because it's getting harder and harder to tell what's real and what's fake, people simply won't believe any of it. Essentially, they'll want to see what's real with their own eyes. So the article lays out a number of trust levels for interactions, and I really do kind of have to agree with this, with the highest trust being in person, followed by Zoom or FaceTime with video cameras on, followed by phone, then text, and then email. And honestly, I think this is a pretty good list in terms of building customer trust and getting your name out there, especially in a world where AI imagery is really starting to become difficult to ascertain the difference between what is fake and what is real. Now, I don't think AI is all bad. I, for one, do leverage AI to help with speeding up writing processes, data analysis, transcriptions, and creating graphics that would otherwise take much more time and effort from initial idea to final product. And honestly, for my workflow, it's not about replacing the human in the process. It's about my business and its ability to allow people and myself to work faster and smarter, not replace people from the pipeline. AI and what should be more accurately referred to as large language models are a tool, a very useful and potentially productive tool. But the problem is that when people get lazy and just copy paste whatever regurgitated response comes out of the large language model or the AI and think that it's all correct. They don't vet it, they don't do anything with it other than copy, paste, profit. So since we're talking about this, I did want to bring up something that I recently brainstormed on Twitter and have been kind of mulling over for probably about a year or so now. If you'll humor me. Once again, I'm saying that we need human-created or curated authentication of data, like SSL or SMIME, but for human versus LLM content. Basically, if you don't like AI content, you want it to filter out AI slop. If you love AI, you want it to filter out data cannibalization and make sure that your models are not sucking in hallucinations and bad information. So my simple outline for this proposed strategy would be using unique biometric data from face, fingerprints, or some combination thereof, create a one-way, and this is key for privacy concerns, but a one-way hashed key pair that lives in media metadata. So you'd have a key that lives on the metadata itself, and then you have a key pair that would live on the blockchain. This would be decentralized and allow for third-party authentication and trust validation of previous work to prevent spoofing or fraudulent signing of documents. In this idea, I would propose 3 levels of trust. Human creation only, AI generated with human curation or validation, and then 3, AI generated with no review. 1 and 2 can be trusted at least to be a human opinion, if not a complete fact, and could be added to the chain as something that is valid. 3 would be excluded, and if not validated and added to the chain, then it would be assumed. Bad actors and validation abusers could be flagged on the chain, and it could create a new info battlefield, but at least the parties would have something pseudo-identifiable, and users/data systems could decide independently what levels of trust they're going to place on specific actors or how they're going to work in their trust ranking models. I'm sure some people will find that a otherwise quote-unquote untrustworthy source due to mass flagging or difference of political opinion is trustworthy. So in this particular model, it would be up to third parties to indicate what level of trust uncertainty that they're comfortable with. Now, in this whole thing, I'm sure that there's something that I've overlooked or missed, and security and cryptography researchers would probably have to point out any additional challenges or other things that I'm not thinking of. But I really do think something like this will become necessary in the near future because of the sheer wave of content, that we have been seeing from large language models, AIs, and lazy spammers just copying, pasting it, and not using it for the tool that it really should be to aid people in their work, not being the end product in of itself. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that AI is making you less trusting of what you see on the internet, or are you not terribly concerned? Do you personally use or leverage AI for any of your current work? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on this and my idea for a validation chain of actual human-created information. So next up in the news, the Justice Department apparently is considering merging the DEA and the ATF. And for once, I actually find myself agreeing with Giffords. What is going on? Let's take a look at the article from Associated Press. Quoting from the article, the memo from Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche seeks feedback on a reorganization plan that would combine the DEA and the ATF into a single agency to achieve efficiencies in resources, case deconflation, and regulatory efforts. It's part of a broader push by the Trump administration to shrink and reshape the federal government, according to the article. Now, of course, gun control group Giffords decried the proposal, saying cutting resources from the ATF would literally be defunding the police. Since when did you guys care about defunding the police? And B, no, it would be taking the enforcement and all of the issues that we've had from the war on drugs and turning it into something that's merged with the ATF. I think this is a terrible and bad idea. If the ATF is not going to be outright abolished in some sensible way, along with the removal of the NFA, Gun Control Act, Brady Bill, etc., then we really need to have it be a pared down agency with less power to make rules and decisions. The biggest problem with the ATF is their ability to make arbitrary decisions about what is and is not legal. That should be completely and irrevocably taken away from them. Chevron deference was a good start, but they really need to be told, hey, you can't make up rules. Period. Once that's done, the ATF will be properly defanged. But until such time that happens, the ATF should not be merged with an even larger agency, and one that has just as bad a history of abusing civil rights and causing problems as the ATF, if not in some ways worse. The ATF is already staffed by people who really, truly do not seem to know how firearms function or work. The ATF should honestly be staffed exclusively by people who are engineers and former members of the firearms industry. That should be the people that they're recruiting from, especially for their, special technologies branch or whatever it is, where they do all of their definitions and decisions. I swear, it's people who have no idea how firearms work writing these decisions, and that's one of the reasons why we had all this stupid flip-flop over stuff like firearm or pistol braces. Honestly, this whole thing is just baffling to me and is unfortunately an example of Trump's Department of Justice really not knowing what it's doing and tripping over its own 2 feet when it comes to the Second Amendment. For all the good that they're doing in other aspects of the executive branch, Trump's administration has definitely dropped the ball here on this particular issue. They've done good in other areas, but we really do need to make our voices heard and say, no, we don't want the ATF abolished in a nonsensical way, nor merged with an even larger agency to create an even more potentially dangerous behemoth to our Second Amendment rights. But what do you guys think? Do you support the potential merger of the DEA and the ATF? Or do you fall closer to the camp that I'm in, where it just sounds like a really bad idea? Let me know in the comments below. But that wraps up this section. Let's move on to our next topic. And coming out of the shooting wire, apparently BNT is suing SureFire. So this is a rather interesting development. SureFire is getting sued by BNT for their quick detach suppressor design. BNT alleges that despite a mutual understanding previously reached between SureFire and BNT, SureFire has breached their agreement and private negotiations apparently have broken down. Hence, BNT is filing suit over patent number 7676976. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure how this will shake out. If BNT's claims that they have preceding patents as well as a history of utilizing them before SureFire tried to get their patents, then they probably have a case. This is interesting. We'll have to see where it goes. If I get any additional information down the line, I'll be sure to report on it. But these kinds of cases do tend to take years to pan out, especially with complex things such as patent laws and decisions. So only time will tell how this particular lawsuit shakes out. But moving on to our next topic, New York State is at it again. Just when you didn't think that they could get even nuttier than trying to find Walmart for selling realistic toy guns in their state, they go ahead and do this. Senate Bill S227A relates to the regulation of three-dimensional printed firearms. Oh, they're trying to ban ghost guns? I thought they already tried to ban ghost guns, even though they don't know what ghost guns are. Oh, no. It's even stupider than that. Purpose or general idea of the bill: to prohibit the use of three-dimensional printers to manufacture ghost guns, silencers, magazines, or other firearms, and to prohibit the sale, distribution, good sentence there, guys, of the digital instructions to do the same. This is a flagrant First Amendment violation. Digital instructions. That's First Amendment territory right there. They are so nuts in going after your right to keep and bear arms that they want to make it impossible for you to have a PDF or an STL file on your computer without going to prison. This is absurd. Transmitting information, writing, drawing, and design work is all protected under the First Amendment. It's freedom of speech. And not only is it a Second Amendment issue, but it is a baseline First Amendment issue. If I have the schematics to a tank or a nuclear bomb, that's fine. That's not a problem. What becomes a problem is when I try to build and use said thing. But, of course, New York, in their infinite wisdom, so ready to trample on the Second Amendment rights, forget that there's also the First Amendment that guarantees and protects our freedom of speech and expression. I cannot believe that this bill was even introduced, and sponsor Hollyman Sigel should be ashamed of themselves. I'm almost impressed that they managed to trample over not one, but two rights at the same time. Hat trick, New York, hat trick. Anyway, this is just another example of their ridiculousness. I really hope that this bill does not pass, but if it does, a suit should be immediately filed to attempt to enjoin this from becoming law, and and probably this will have to work its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. So probably in year 2, I'll be talking about this particular bill again and saying how hopefully the Supreme Court of the United States said, no, are you dumb? This is a First Amendment issue. Your law is null and void. But only time will tell. And of course, if you are an unfortunate viewer living in the state of New York, I think the best thing that you can do is call up your particular representative, let them know that, hey, this is a First Amendment issue. You are trampling on the First Amendment. Maybe if they get told that, they'll actually wake up. But I'm not going to hold my breath on that particular one. But let me know what your thoughts are on this particular Senate bill in New York in the comments section below. But let's move on to our next topic. And to round things out, drama at TRex Arms of all places. Lucas Botkin recently released a statement on May 31st, just a couple of days ago. Quote, per my shareholder agreement with my business partners, they will be buying out my equity. This decision was not made lightly, but was required in order to maintain my values and take care of my family. I will share more details in the coming months, but the future is exciting and new ventures are already underway. I'm not done yet. Well, I didn't have that on my bingo card for this year, but apparently Lucas Botkin, founder of TRex Arms, is out at TRex Arms and bought out by his business partners, which, if I'm not mistaken, include his brother Isaac, who released a video that was somewhat vague, talking about the situation, along with an email. So in the email, they say, quote, Lucas Botkin chose to resign from TRex Arms. There's been a growing misalignment, personally and professionally, between Lucas and the other 3 owners. Something had to give, and now it has. However, TRex Arms is more than one person. We are nearly 100 team members strong, and our purpose remains the same, to serve our customers and the mission. Our principles and direction don't belong to any individual. They belong to God alone. We'll keep pressing forward, creating excellent content, delivering great products, and aiming for unmatched customer service. We're committed to living out the Christian principles this company was built on, now more than ever. So, a rather interesting statement, and there has been a lot flying around the rumor mill. So, I'm going to attempt to stick to what we have at least a reasonable knowledge of. What we can confirm is an employee who TRex Arms has said quite unequivocally no longer works there, sent inappropriate pictures to someone Lucas was close with. The rumor mill says it's his wife. This has not been confirmed by anyone, so that's totally rumors. It was not handled well internally or initially, apparently, and that's about all we got. It's a very odd kind of statement, and leads me to think that there was some kind of friction going on between Lucas and the other owners of the company. What follows is going to be pure speculation, and I'm going to try to keep it at a minimum here. I mean, maybe Lucas was upset at the initial handling of the situation and resigned due to some kind of lack of influence in the company. Maybe they blocked him from taking harsher or quicker action than the rest of them wanted to do. And because of that, he decided, hey, I'm out, I'm done, buy me out, peace. Which I can understand. If you if you have a company that you're supposed to be an owner in and founded, and your level of influence has been diluted so much so that you can't quickly shuffle off one rogue employee for doing something highly inappropriate like that, yeah, I'd be pretty peeved too. So I get that. The other thing that I could think of is potentially there was some kind of conflict in the messaging between what Lucas wanted to take the company messaging in and what the rest of them wanted to do. I know Lucas has been rather vocal about his pro-Christian leanings, and maybe he wanted to be a little bit more firebrandy than everyone else was comfortable with for the brand. Maybe complete speculation on that one, but I don't think that this one particular issue was the end all be all or the sole reason why. This is the kind of thing that takes a while to build up and takes a while for someone to decide, hey, I'm just going to leave my company that I founded. So I'm interested to see what happens with TRex Arms. Seems like they're still a decent company with decent products. That doesn't seem to have changed any with Lucas leaving. I'm interested to see what Lucas does next in terms of his future projects. He's already proven himself capable of building up a business and creating a very strong brand with good products behind it. So who knows? We'll just have to see. Lucas has teased that, additional details will be coming out in his initial statements in the following months. So I would avoid the rumor mill or any kind of baseless speculation coming from random people on Twitter and or Reddit, especially given that there's a lot of stuff that we flat out don't know until more official information comes from either TRex or Lucas, more or less straight from the horse's mouth. Everything's going to be speculation at this point. But that wraps up our topics for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you would, please leave a like, share, comment about your thoughts on the various topics that we covered. What do you guys think about TRex Arms losing Lucas? Good thing, bad thing, neutral? What do you think about Rare Breed Triggers? Do you think that their recent little PR push with James Reeves has changed your opinion on them? What do you guys think about SIG's ongoing issues? Let me know in the comments below. Our current goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers, so if you would, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and as always, I'm Anders, E.T. Hertzberg for the Cap Ball Saloon, hoping to see you all again real soon.